Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, GuiltyFeat. Tonight the music seems so loud. I've got no rhythm. This very much, reviewing this book is kind of what this whole channel has been driving towards. Because the book I'm going to talk about is Tonight the Music Seems So Loud, The Meaning of George Michael by Sathnam Sanghera, which I just finished over the weekend. The title, the main title of the book, Tonight the Music Seems So Loud, is a lyric from the same song that I took inspiration for my channel name from. So GuiltyFeat and Tonight the Music Seems So Loud are both lyrics from Careless Whisper by George Michael. And this is a kind of serious a look. It's not so much. It's not a biography of George Michael. It's more about Sathnam Sanghera's experience as a fan of George Michael over time, but also looks at Michael's life and what he achieved and what he could have achieved, and not a hagiography, but not a damning biography. And in shape, clearly, this man loves George Michael deeply, as many of us do, and so I think this is a fun read. If you're a fan, this is going to be a fun read. So I have a long history with George Michael, starting with me not really loving Wham or really getting them and finding them very cheesy and very poppy, and then only in '87. When Michael has gone solo and he releases I Want Your Sex as the first single of Faith, and then I got a copy of Faith on cassette. I was coming to Israel after high school, and I played that to death on my Walkman and shared it with everyone else, and realized that he was the greatest songwriter of our generation. And then when a couple of years later, Listen Without Prejudice comes out, and I bought that. I remember buying that on CD. I remember which shop I bought it from. It was a record shop called Loppy Lugs, which was on Station Road in Edgware. And the reason why I mentioned Station Road in Edgware, because it was right down one end of Station Road in Edgware. If you walked east, I think, yes, that makes sense. If you walk east up Station Road, past Edgware Station, which is the last stop on the Northern Line, which was my local tube station. If you walk all the way past the station, cross over the road to the same side of the station, and keep walking, you would come to what used to be called, I think it's totally fallen out of use now. There was a big hotel there called the Railway Inn, and then just past that, there used to be a restaurant called the Angus Steakhouse. And the Angus Steakhouse, and I remember very clearly, I didn't go there because we were Jewish and we kept kosher and we didn't eat in steakhouses. But I remember the Angus Steakhouse very, very clearly. And the reason why I bring it up now is because the Angus Steakhouse famously is the first place that George Michael ever played Careless Whisper. And the reason why he was playing it in the Angus Steakhouse is because the Angus Steakhouse was owned and operated by George Michael's father. And if I tell you that George Michael first performed Careless Whisper in his father's restaurant in the Angus Steakhouse, probably, if I left my front door and walked up what at some points is Watling Avenue, one of the oldest Roman roads in Britain, and turn left at the lights, you get to the Angus Steakhouse in about 8-9 minutes from my door. That's how close to my home George Michael's father's restaurant was. And I learned this much later, because I wasn't, in those years, I wasn't really into George Michael. Took it till '87 and then I left London. I came to Israel for 2 years in '87. But in sort of '83, '84, Wham was sort of a girls' band, a pop band. I wasn't into them. I remember telling my wife this story, and she goes, "Yeah, we knew that." I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "We used to hang outside the Angus Steakhouse, me and her friend, who I know very well, because we wanted to see George Michael's dad and see if he could tell us where George was." So my wife knew. She also lived in the same town, for a bit in the other direction, and they used to go and hang outside the Angus Steakhouse, hoping to bump into George Michael. So I did manage to see George Michael twice in concert. Once I had to go on my own in 1991 because I wanted to go and see George Michael, and none of my friends wanted to go see George. So I bought one ticket and went to a pop concert on my own. It was quite a good one. It was on the Cover to Cover tour, where he was doing his solo stuff, but also doing cover versions. One of the cover versions that he did on the tour was Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me by Elton John, which he'd also done at Live Aid in '85. By '91, he's doing on tour, and I was there in the audience when, at the end of the first verse, he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Elton John," and Elton John comes on stage, and famously, the duet recording went to #1 in England and around the world, and I was actually in the audience when Elton John surprised us all by turning up on stage. And then I saw George also in World AIDS Day, December 1st, 1993, with Princess Diana in the audience at a concert also in Wembley Arena, I believe, where George came on. First was Katie Lang, then Mick Hucknall, and then George Michael, all introduced by David Bowie. And we were sitting behind and to the left of Princess Diana, and it was a concert in the round, but that was the second time I saw George perform. And he's been part of my life ever since. And this book tells these stories. It tells the stories of his perfectionism. It tells the story of his drug addiction. It tells the story of what it was like not being out for so many years, and the homophobia in the industry. I don't think it gives him a free pass at all for the years when there was a lot of speculation about his sexuality, but he wasn't openly out. But then it balances that with saying, well, everyone in his life knew he was out, but it was not, it would, for whatever reason, I don't want to excuse this. It's not my business to tell anyone what they should and should not say about their sexuality, but it talks about that. And then how he was outed by the incident in the Will Rogers Park in America, where he was entrapped, I think it's fair to say, by an undercover police officer, and arrested and charged, and then produced that tremendous response, the greatest response possible to being shamed. He took responsibility for what he'd done and produced the song Outside, and spoke about his life, his love life, what cruising meant to him, and his sexuality. And after that, I think, showed a sort of freedom and a relaxation about his life that hadn't been apparent. But we also know that this was a man who went through several bouts of depression, several bouts of writer's block. So after '91, he, Listen Without Prejudice, he doesn't release another album until 1996, 97, where we get older, with the tracks Fast Love and You Have Been Loved and Spinning That Wheel and Jesus to a Child, I think. And then his final album of new material, Through, which comes out much later, 10 years after that. And so we got 4 solo albums. We got a whole bunch of fun singles in Wham, and we got some cover versions, things. George Michael was a terrific coverer of other people's songs, notably his duet with Mary J. Blige, notably his performance with Queen at the Freddie Mercury Memorial Concert, where he sings Somebody to Love, just a man that left us a great legacy. This is a fun book. It's a sad book in many ways. George Michael died almost 10 years ago, Christmas 2016. Like many of the pop stars who died too young, we think about what we might have got later in his career. But we got plenty to be going on with. Tonight the Music Seems So Loud, The Meaning of George Michael. I thought this was a great read, maybe sort of laser targeted to me as a reader and my interests, but I think there's enough here to recommend if you have any love of the 80s, if you have any love of George Michael and his music, if you have any love of Careless Whisper, which seems to never really gone away since 1984. It's over 40 years old, that song, and it seems to keep showing up in reels and in movies, and there must be something magical about that. And the fact that Last Christmas, which was always a terribly cheesy song, is now a sort of de facto in place as the #1 song over the Christmas period in the UK. There is a certain amount of genius going on there. and yet so much that we don't know, and so much that that we could have had. I thought this was terrific. Tonight Music Seems Allowed, The Meaning of George Michael by Sathnam Sanghera. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.